Thank you all so much for bearing with me for a moment. I'm really happy to be here with you and tell you a little bit about what I'm doing, why I'm here, and we'll get started. So the talk that I'm giving today is called Refining My Foundation, RMF, Career Transition to Cybersecurity. And when we think about that term, it is usually applied as a different type of acronym, right? There's so many acronyms in security, and it's usually Risk Management Framework, RMF. And the thing is, when you are taking a chance, when you're pivoting, you are also, you're taking a risk. And so I felt like this was still a good acronym to apply to what I am doing, and also share a bit about my story and share some techniques as well. I have a great moderator here, Grace. So if you have any questions, feel free to post those in chat, and then also connect with me on LinkedIn or on Slack later, and I'm happy to continue the conversation. I'm going to share screen, and that worked. That's great. So hopefully you all can see. Well, thank you again for bearing with me. It is, part of everything with technology. I absolutely love it, but then of course we have our issues and struggles with it. So, it is not a virtual conference without any sort of tech issues. So, we're talking about this idea of refining a foundation. And when we think about one's foundation, you really have to start at a beginning. And to begin at a beginning, you need to tell a bit about someone's background. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am, where I come from, just a little bit of a story. And so to begin at the beginning, we have to start with a question. And we'll begin with that age-old question. What do you want to be when you grow up? And we'll actually do this as a little bit of a interactive piece as well too. So feel free to interact some with this. Grace is going to add something in just a little bit for us to interact with this. And this will be part one of interactive, and we'll have a much more involved interactive piece later. So this will kind of get your feet wet, and then we'll get much more advanced interactivity later. So get ready for it. So with this question, what do you want to be when you grow up? You can think of so many different things. And, I still ask myself that question, what do I want to be? How am I iterating? How am I changing? What do I want to work on for my foundation? How do I want to refine that? So still asking that question, right? And when you think about where you come from, well, one of the foundations of who I am an inherently curious person. I love to ask questions, and to the point where I was actually given the nickname of Curious George by my parents, because I just asked all of these different questions. I was always doing experiments, trying things out. Sometimes they were good. Sometimes they were a little bit on the more dangerous side. I don't know about you when you were growing up, but my parents were really great with letting me have a bit of leeway. And we had actually to replace some microwaves from my experiments that I did. So good to be careful around me with that kind of thing. So I also just love to tinker. I love to build. I love to figure out how things work. And I still love to do this to this day. So, I have a Raspberry Pi Pico here. I love to figure out how things work, take them apart, and understand that. And I also had a knack for working with software and kind of understanding hey, Megan, I've got this new software. Can you teach me how it works? Or, oof, this thing I have, it stopped working. Can you help fix it? So I was the go-to in the family for fixing things, for teaching things. And so all this being said, you would think curiosity, problem solving, building, right? That's a great setup. Well, she's going to go into computer science, right? And so all of those things, and I'm seeing someone saying you don't want to be bored, right? It leads you down different paths. You would think that I would possibly go into computer science, but I did not. And so, that goes back to this question of what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, maybe you wanted to be an astronaut and work with NASA. Maybe you wanted to be a paleontologist, and this is actually a Stegosaurus skull in here. Maybe you wanted to be a pilot. Maybe you didn't want to be any of these things, and that's fine. So the question that I have for you is, what are some of the things that you wanted to be when you grew up? So we have a survey here. We'll get a word cloud at the end. You can use the QR code or you can use the link here, and we'll kind of get some nice little bit of interactivity about some of the things that you wanted to be. So I'm seeing things like veterinarian, artist, interior designer, fashion designer, paleontologist, just like I went on those digs, network engineer, lawyer, author, zoologist. And the beautiful thing is we don't have to be just one thing, right? We can be so many different things. So we can see some really nice different options here that people thought about. Oh, someone as a kid, they thought of a CISO. See, I'd never even heard of a CISO when I was a kid. That's awesome. That is really cool. CEO, great. I love that drive for leadership. PhD, that's awesome. Really, really cool things. See, I thought I would want to be a veterinarian or a teacher. So definitely something towards STEM. And so I was trying to kind of just figure out like what I wanted to be. And I did end up becoming a teacher, and I've done that for the past 12 years. And so then the question is, you know, as one is thinking about what one wants to be, I'm going to switch back. I think I have to stay with keeping it on the other screen. So thank you all for sharing. Like I said, that's going to be our kind of getting our feet wet with doing a bit of sharing right there. So, you know, as much as I really loved that tinkering in that building, I went into education, and in the past several years, I've really focused more so on teaching computer science and engineering to 11th and 12th graders. And what I've done is I've realized the past few years, I don't want to teach computer science. I want to be doing computer science. I want to be in this field. I want to be in security. And so that led me to do an analysis about really thinking about, well, what would it mean to pivot and how would I do that? And so that's what I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you about how to pivot, how to refine that beginning, and then we'll get to actually do some work with that. So one of the biggest things first is, as much as possible, try and figure out information about yourself. Who are you, the person? What do you like? What makes you want to get up in the morning and really get out of bed and, you know, put those sweatpants on, you know, and just get ready for the day. Another thing that can be really helpful is having a mentor. And there's actually a mentor and mentee Slack part of our Day of Security channel. So that can be a great place to start. And additionally, thinking about sampling so many different things. You know, you won't know what you don't know what you don't know. And so it might be that you really love cyber threat intelligence. Grace gave a great talk on that earlier today. It might be that you really love digital forensics. You're not going to know what you like and don't like. And so just trying out a lot of different things can be incredibly, incredibly helpful. And then as you start to figure out, you're like, oh, I love Linux. That is my thing. You're like, I want to be a Linux master. Then you can start to narrow, right? And then start to really focus in on doing more and more with that. So that can be incredibly helpful. And once you're figuring out narrowing, you can start setting up some really specific goals and having accountability around those. Now that accountability can happen with your mentor, but it doesn't have to be. It could be that you have an accountability buddy who is someone who actually is like a two-way street, right? You're helping provide them with accountability, and then they're also providing you with accountability. Or it could be a one-way thing, right? It kind of depends on what you're doing. So that's one thing. And then I wanted to share this quote with you. I absolutely love this quote. Surround yourself with people that push you to do better. No drama or negativity, just higher goals and higher motivation, good times and positive energy, no jealousy or hate, simply bringing out the absolute best in each other. This is from Warren Buffett. I just thought it was such a fitting quote because it is so important to make sure that the people in your circle, the people you're spending the most time with, be it in person or virtual, are just cheering you on, that they are there for you. They're like, yes, go, you've got this. And then this is me. I'm a little bit biased for this one. I've already started with this idea of I'm curious. So I really do think it's important to be curious and be asking those questions, be looking for the why. And within that, fostering that growth mindset. Some ways you can work on this: you can read and follow a lot of security organizations. You can set up following them on LinkedIn. I do recommend setting up some Google alerts to look at that as well. And then figuring out a news aggregator site that you can be looking at, like a feed that you would have about news information. Additionally, you can think about, well, where am I right now? So I've started to go broad, then narrow. Where are my skills now? And how can I intersect? How can where my skills are now intersect with what my goal is, where I want to go? And then practice, practice, practice. And we're actually going to be doing this really soon because, like I said, I already alluded to it. We're going to be doing some actual work with this today. So I've already said, I didn't start in computer science. And I gave you a little clue. I said it was not my first bachelor's degree. I've already said I'm working on a pivot. And then I've already said this was not our first interaction. I've already said we've done one interaction piece. So I wanted to also share, where am I in my pivot? Well, I'm in my learning and volunteering stage. And in fact, I've been volunteering today. Earlier today, I was doing moderating for different people's talks, including Grace's, actually. She's moderating for me. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And then I also volunteer with Women in Cybersecurity, WESIS. So I'm on their resources committee at the national level, and I just really enjoy going to their various talks as well, too. Additionally, I'm pursuing a second bachelor's degree from the University of Maryland Global Campus in computer science with a focus in cybersecurity and networking, and also a cybersecurity certificate from George Washington University. So very entrenched in the learning, participating, being involved in a lot of different things. I attend a lot of talks, be it SANS summits or talks by a variety of different people. I graduate this summer, so it's really exciting. I hope to be working in the information security field sometime later on this year. And I thought this could be a helpful site for us to just very briefly look at. So I will escape here. So if you haven't been here before, this is a tool that is put together by CISA and the National Initiatives for Cybersecurity Careers and Studies. And it can just be a really useful piece. So like, for example, if you like analysis, you might click on one of these and be like, okay, I really enjoy analysis. And then each of these nodes will actually demonstrate how they connect to other jobs. And so this can be just really excellent to explore. It also has a Venn diagram at the top that shows you different ways it intersects with other fields. And then it uses the NICE framework. And then I found this part really helpful as well because it has some documentation, but then it additionally goes here with these on-ramps and off-ramps, because we're always working on refining who we are and thinking about, I want to iterate. And so you want to think about, well, maybe I'm in a certain role now, but what do I want to do later on, right? So they have ways to get into this role, and then they have roles that are next. And so I really liked that piece where it's like, well, this is the foundation, and then what is next? So I thought that was a really good connection from this website. So really excellent to explore. Definitely could spend a ton of time just having this be a huge rabbit hole. So I wanted to share that tool. Okay, so I've shared where I'm in my pivot. We're going to actually have it now be your turn, where you're going to get some time to really work extensively on refining your foundation. And I came up with several different questions to help phrase this. Now, depending on how interactive you want to be, you'll get to decide which one you want to go for. And Grace should have been posting the slides, and so you can have access to the slides, and then also the different options that are here as well too. And so I'm going to walk through these different options and then kind of explain why you might want to choose one over the other. So there's one that is like, I just want to work on this solo. It's kind of like my goals are private. I don't want to share out. And that's totally fine. There's one where I'm like, okay, I want to work with one partner. And I believe, I have not tested this, right? So I believe that you can click on one other person's name in chat, and then you can do a one-to-one person chat, and you could work with them then on this Google Doc. And so maybe that could even end up being your accountability buddy. And then the most interactive level is this one here, the top one on Padlet. It is still a private space. This is a link that's just shared amongst this group, so it's not public facing, but everyone who's in this group who has this link can see what you are writing and what has been written, if something's written. So I'll walk through what's on there. So this is the one that's most interactive. We can see there's already a little bit of writing on there. I wrote this top bold part. So I came up with these different questions. So I really believe you can learn anything. Oh no, I'm so sorry you're not able to open it. So I guess maybe kind of look at the different questions. And if you want to send me a Slack thing, I can send you screenshots of them, and then possibly without your work laptop. So I'm really sorry you're not able to open them right now. So I do really believe you're able to learn anything, and kind of thinking about like, what is it that you like to do? And what is it that you like to spend time learning? So that's kind of the first thing. And then underneath each of these, you can click the plus and you're able to write something. So it looks like someone already got in here, which is awesome. And we did a little bit of writing. So he said, I like to analyze problems and think about solutions. I also like CTF events, and they like to learn from conferences, like probably like things like this, and also reading. And then the next question I have is, where are your skills now? What are you highly skilled at? And this can be soft, necessary skills, and also the technical skills. And as I'm reading through these, if you want to actually get started, you're welcome to. So this person wrote that they are still learning a bunch, but they feel like they don't know anything. I mean, that's a really big thing, like imposter syndrome. I do have some knowledge with Python, and I'm also quite skilled with organizing teams and setting up deadlines. And then someone replied to them, "You've got this." That's awesome. And then it's very reasonable that people have not gotten to the next ones. So other parts are there any intersections between first and second column? What's one of your professional end goals? What are some steps you're currently taking to refine your foundation? What are some gaps between where you are now and where you want to be? How will you fill those gaps? And then celebrate. You're one step closer to that. And then here's a complete compendium of resources that I put together. And then I'm happy to connect and cheer you on as you work on this. So I'll briefly just show this. This resource list is something that is just from a bunch of learning I've done. And then I also sent it out to my LinkedIn community and said, hey, if anyone wants to add to this, let me know. So then I added in things that people replied about. This one and this one, I just wanted to highlight. This is the one I just showed. And then this one's really excellent. CyberSN is also here. And they have cybersecurity positions split into 45 different roles and really nicely defined. So I do recommend checking out that. So, and if this is not a static list, so if there's other resources that you know of that you'd recommend me adding, just let me know. I'd be happy to add those. So I'm going to give about 10 minutes to work on these. If you're working on it from the Google Doc, you'll do file and make a copy because you have viewing rights and not editing rights. And then, like I said, you're either working with one other person or working solo. And then you can see it's the same questions. I just switched number 3 refers to as number 1 and number 2 and not a column. So we're going to just take a little bit of time and work on those, and then we'll come back all together. And if you have any questions as you're working on stuff, let me know. I'm seeing some good stuff in here about reading reports. Yeah, very important to be able to translate between different groups. Oh, I love this idea about making a difference. That is so important. Yeah, connecting different things. Yeah, I think that as an educator, producing content that people understand is something that I do have experience with. So if you are working on a pivot, kind of taking those skills that you have, right? Because whatever it is that you did previously, it's not lost time. That is your foundation. And so when you're refining, when you're iterating over, it's not that those are, lost skills or lost time. It's that you can reuse those. Yeah, and for the person who is writing about taking different courses, the resources thing I have, which is the second to last column, has a lot of courses in there, and everything that's on there is free or freemium. But almost everything on there is just straight regular free. And if you are new to cyber, the SANS New to Cyber is upcoming in April. I know I'm attending that, and every SANS summit that I've been to has been really excellent. They have a digital forensic one coming up and a cloud computing one coming up as well. Yeah, Tanya, who gave a talk earlier today, who does We Hack Purple, is the keynote for the New to Cyber talk. Yeah, Elise, Grace just shared the SANS New to Cyber, and then Grace had also shared the resources Wakelet that I created as well. So I have like a whole huge thing on a bunch of resources, over 50 actually, that I compiled. Wakelet is super helpful. As you can probably tell, I'm tending a little bit more towards like visual, and our brains often work that way. So this is a visual of my talk actually. And I really definitely like to have both the visual and the auditory. And Wakelet takes websites and it makes a visual map of them. So there's 55 items on the Wakelet. And it kind of gives like a little bit of a description if they had something that it could pull from it, but it's just doing a scraping function. And then it pulls a visual from there. So I have the digital forensics. I was mentioning that as a field before. Hack the Box is great over the wire. Here's the SANS. I specifically did the New to Cyber, but then I did the SANS summits in general. So these are all their upcoming summits. There's Purple Team Cloud, Digital Forensics. Those are the ones that, if they're in blue, you can actually currently register for them. And these are all free. So they're 2-day summits, even though, or this one's 1 day, but most of the times they're 2-day. So even though you might see like a big time span here, that's because there's also paid classes. Oh, I like the addition here. It's nice. Yeah, speaking can be hard. Like this is actually my first security talk. So, thinking about like where your gaps are. So I was like thinking like, well, what can I speak about in regards to security? I'm not an expert in any field yet, right? And so we go into like imposter syndrome, right? And I was like, well, the one thing I can speak about is my experience and what I'm doing. I'm literally pivoting. I'm switching into this field. And I think that could be of value. So that's why I applied to speak at Day of Security about that. So it can be hard to think about like what you might have to say that would be of value to bring to the table. So just trying to think about like what you're doing. And I think that gets into this question of in here, what do you like to spend time learning? You know, we're all passionate about something and probably more than one thing. And if it's that thing that you can't stop talking about, you can probably give a talk on it. It might be scary, but you could probably give a talk on it. And so that's kind of what it's like taking that risk, right? It's refining, working on that foundation, taking that risk. So that's part of what it's about. Oh, good question. So what's one of the biggest lessons I've learned during my pivot so far? I think don't be afraid to try new and different things that you're not even certain if you'll like. So there's so many things, like I had no idea security was so broad. And I had never heard of ICS/OT before. So industrial control systems. And I was like, well, I've never heard of this before. Why don't I go to this free talk that's on it? And I actually found it incredibly fascinating. And it's the security that's behind controlling our grid and our water systems. Like we all probably heard about the hack that went into the water plant in Florida, right? So it's the security behind protecting those. And I think that one of the biggest lessons that I learned is, you know, just really keep trying new things and thinking about like, well, even if you haven't heard of it, just try it, because you don't know what that's about. There's just so much that you don't know. So I think that's been a really big lesson to learn that. Is it hard working full time? So yeah, so let me switch slides because I do have a slide that talks about questions. I'll come back to that in just a moment. Okay, so I will answer that question. I'm going to come back to it in just a moment. So we just spent some time working on these questions. I hope you were able to get fairly far through them and that you found it useful. And if people wanted to maybe share in chat some of the things that they learned, some of the things that they noticed, that would be really excellent. And I hope that you're able to continue with that. What I wanted to end with is just reminding you that we do have this compendium of resources here that I think you'll find really useful. And stay curious. And this quote, I think we are always becoming the woman we want to be, by Cleo Wade, that I just thought was so lovely, that we're always refining, that we're always reinventing who we are. And then here's a visual of the talk that I've had up a few times. So you can kind of see we've taken on this whole journey, this path. And in total, I just want to celebrate that you all are, you know, on this journey, possibly pivoting like I am. Or if you're already in security, you are probably thinking about, you know, well, what are some additional skills I want to work on? What is maybe a different role I want to take on? What's a new challenge I want to have? So no matter what you're doing, you can always be iterating, you can always be refining your foundation. And so that's the beauty of it, is that you can always be thinking, just like Chloe said, or just like Cleo said, I think we are always becoming the woman we want to be. So you can always be iterating over. And so I want to go back to the question that I was asked. You know, I am, you know, like I said, I'm a teacher, and I'm wrapping that up. It is sometimes because, you know, you're constantly working on balancing things, but other times it is not, because, I do have time set aside for these things. So I have been able to balance it. So it has been doable. I also know it is time constrained, and I've been able to pace out my classes that I've been taking over time. So it's not that I'm taking a full course load. So I've been working on this for a bit. So I think that also makes it doable. So if anyone has any other questions or wants to share anything that they were working on, that would be lovely. I'm happy to hear that in chat or through Slack or on LinkedIn. So thank you very much for listening to the talk, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day and a great conference.